Hi there. Happy Hump Day. I am Dr. LaReesa, and I'm talking to all of those women who were in the club. You know exactly what I'm talking about, the 40 plus and beyond club, because that's when our bodies are going through many changes. And what I find is, as I'm even going through social media pages or mainstream or any of the news and media outlets out there, I'm starting to see a pool of information that's coming out and geared toward this specific population. And it's so amazing that we're starting to be heard, because beyond fertility and necessarily having conception problems or other early reproductive issues, there's an area and an outlet for women in that club. And the 40 plus club is what we want to gear toward today, because as you're going through perimenopause and menopause, we want you, or I want you, to live your most best life, but not just your best life, to thrive and not just survive, to be able to perform and produce and be more powerful with your decisions. Because whether you're in the corporate arena, at home, and many other areas, your biological clock is going to remind you what's going on with your body, and you want to be more prepared. So today I'm bringing on a guest, someone that I'll be working closely with, as far as building additional relationships, helping this 40 plus club of women out there with really gearing toward those best outcomes. So whether it is weight management, whether it's emotional eating, whether it's in the category of really going through these stages of life with a lot more vitality, a lot more just improved outcomes, because I'm always going to talk about that longevity curve, because whatever you do today is going to prepare you for your tomorrow. And most importantly, your future is bright when you do so, because you're planning and sowing in the season of the rape or the stage of life that you're in right now. So I figured this would be a good time to start talking about some of the integrative pieces that exist now that may not necessarily be completely mainstream, but functional medicine or functional health coaches or holistic practitioners that are out there, women oftentimes have to seek them or find them, because it may not necessarily be something right in front of them, what I consider on that list of medical practitioners or providers or health providers that are covered with your insurance or within your preferred providers, but they're part of your team you. And that is so important, because I like to talk to women who want to think out of the box, who understand there's no one trick pony, that there is always a personalized approach, and there is no one size fits all methodology with, especially when it comes to these pivot points in life. So today I wanted to bring in someone who has a very integrated functional medicine background. But what I love about Carla Moss, who's visiting with me today, is that she brings a wealth of information of really working with women in this 40 plus club in such a way that tying in not only functional medicine and holistic health practitioner tools, but I love it because she has an emphasis not only on the psychology behind women in this area, but the emotional psychology that comes with it, and targeting very important tools to help women in the club get to their most deepest outcomes, so you can be more fierce, more powerful, more productive, 40 plus and beyond. So without much ado, of course, because Carla gets all the praise from me, and I'm going to be one of her biggest cheerleaders, but she probably wants me to kind of damper it down a little bit. But I get excited about talking this and people who are aligned. And so I wanted to bring in Carla Moss. And welcome. And once again, Carla Moss is a holistic practitioner who has a lot of fundamental health coaching tools implemented in Women 40 Plus Club, as well as functional medicine and integrative medical tools. So welcome, Carla. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I was pepped up from just the introduction that you made about the club. I am so a member of that club. Well, you know what? It may start in the 40s, but it continues. It continues into our 50s and beyond. And the earlier we get in the club and start figuring things out, the better for us from a longevity standpoint and a sustainability standpoint. So I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, good. And I have to put it out there that Carla and I met through a mutual friend. And this mutual friend, I can't remember how you all met, but it was instant that she heard, I guess, integrative, holistic, 40 plus, and perimenopause, menopause, and longevity, which are all the things I speak about. And it was like, you got to meet Dr. LaReesa. And we connected and we've been buddies since, huh? Haven't we, Carla?
Yes, we have. I was so excited to meet you because you know what? It's really rare, and it shouldn't be. And hopefully it'll grow, but it's really rare to run into people who specialize like yourself in this area of health, particularly for women, because this is the time of our lives where things start to get confusing. Right? The things we used to do that kept us healthy before we reached our 40s start to not always work.
Yeah.
When we reach our 40s. So I was so happy to meet you and to just see the similarities and wanting to help women in this phase of life.
Oh, absolutely. And so let's just start right off the cuff. So won't you help for those who may not be familiar with not only functional medicine, but how you play in that role as a holistic practitioner and health coach. And I want you to also mention like your, part of your background. How did you get into this?
Okay. Well, it's funny because I became a health coach in 2012, which was also the year I turned 50. So I was in the peak of my perimenopause journey, going through all kinds of things I couldn't understand or really figure out why they were happening to me. So I really wound up going to get my first credential in health coaching to really kind of help myself. But I was suffering through my 40s with so many symptoms that I didn't even think to attribute to hormone changes. I just thought, I must have been doing something wrong, but I really started to feel out of control of my body. And you mentioned earlier, a lot of us, while we are entering our 40s and in our 40s, start to see the weight gain creep up. And I couldn't figure out why that was happening. I was eating the same way I'd always eaten, but I went through that perimenopause phase that usually takes about 10 years. I went from a size 6 to a size 16 and just didn't know why that was happening. And of course, that contributed to me feeling depressed. It contributed to the emotional things that come along with when you are not happy with your state of being, your well-being. And a lot of those things are attributed to the hormonal changes that happen in our body. And we start to develop a lot of conditions during that time, potentially, if we don't have a good handle on what's going on. So that's really what kind of led me to health coaching to begin with. And I started off in an integrative nutrition program, which pretty much gave me, a very holistic and broad knowledge of all the different nutritional theories that are out there, which was very helpful and very foundational. But it really wasn't until I found ancestral health and functional medicine that I really started to connect the dots that were going on with me during those perimenopausal years, and decided to niche down and get some further certifications in functional medicine, health coaching, because of that. So that's kind of how I wound up in this field. Yeah.
And it's always a journey, right? It's oftentimes it's the impetus from our own personal experiences. And that's what I think it's so beautiful about, like, you have to think outside the box. You have to think that there's something else out there than what's typically seen in mainstream. which I don't have a problem with at all. It serves a purpose.
Yeah.
But just like you have a team of players that are going toward a same goal in athletics, that's how you need to do for your life. You need to have a team of players in order to achieve your greatest outcome. So what I thought was interesting, because this is something I didn't even learn about in medical school, right? It wasn't functional medicine. There wasn't anything about ancestral health other than connecting some of the the dots when it came to particular subject matter. But it was very from a sense of not collectively really understanding it with clinical applications. So tell me how this connects for you, especially for that 40 plus club, and for them to lead more sustainable, healthy lives.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that you brought up the traditional, conventional method of our healthcare system, which is good, but doesn't always encompass holistically what's going on with a person. We're told we may have a condition, and we might be told what we need to do to reverse it, but we are rarely told how to actually implement and adhere to those recommendations that our primary care physician is giving us. And for me, I knew I had to lose weight, and I was being told I had to lose weight, but I couldn't figure out how, because things were just changing in my body that I couldn't control. So functional medicine and ancestral health are paradigms of health that really are into digging deeper than a primary care physician has time to do, right? You have a 15-minute visit, you get the basics, and then you're gone. And a functional medicine practitioner, or someone who is studying ancestral health, really wants to dig deep to the core, the root causes of why things are happening. And that's what I needed to do, because what I knew wasn't enough. And so ancestral health is really about connecting the dots of it's based on the Paleolithic period of anthropology, when man was walking the earth, and what he was eating and what he was doing and how he lived his life. Those are ancestral things that have, over time, we have those ancestral things inside of us. So ancestral health really does look at our genetics pretty deeply to kind of understand what we're predisposed to. And by the way, our genetics, whatever they are, whatever traits we are, don't necessarily, particularly the negative ones, don't have to necessarily be expressed. There are things we can do to prevent those expressions of those variants that might lead to chronic disease. So I went down that path and wanted to really understand that, and did my genetics and understood, kind of what I was born into. And then the functional medicine part, which is also very focused, going deep and on the root cause of why a symptom, a disease is presenting itself, by trying to take it back to the root cause. Well, why did this develop in the first place? Could it have been attributed to your personal ancestral things, the antecedents, the things you were born with, the things that occurred in utero while your mother was pregnant? What did your mother and father, what conditions or diseases or symptoms did your mother and father have? What diseases, conditions did your grandparents have? And trying to understand that information to understand your current state. I really like the really getting to the root cause. And if you think of it as a tree, really thinking about the roots of how you as that tree kind of grew, and those branches, whether they're good for you or not, kind of develop based on what was in there in the beginning. So functional medicine is really about gathering information all the way back to our ancestry, to organizing that information through our systems that make our bodies function, and then ordering and prioritizing based on what we learn about our own genetic makeup and our our things that have happened to us throughout our lives, figuring out where we should prioritize optimizing our wellness based on that information, then coming up with a care plan based on that information, and tracking our progress. So there's really a system that you walk through in functional medicine that really is about getting you to a better outcome rather than just dealing with the symptoms, which is a lot of what we're doing in traditional medicine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like how you definitely piece some of those things together, because that was part of my educational journey, and seeing how all that can be used within this realm of women who really need help just beyond fixing a menstrual disorder, because oftentimes it's something even behind that. And at the end of the day, I've given you a prescription, and yes, it's kind of like a Band-Aid for now until I learn there are other things that can be put in place to really help a woman thrive, much better, and just really work toward living their best life. We say it, but then we got to be intentional about it. We got to be strategic about it, and we got to be about it. How about that? We just got to be about it.
That's so true. That's so true. And it's funny because we have a lot of control with our outcomes, even when we get a diagnosis that may sound, life-ending, or this is just something I got to live with. Our lifestyle, the lifestyle factors are the things that we can control to help reverse those things, like diabetes or heart disease. There are things that are lifestyle factors that's also part of functional medicine that we have control over. They're modifiable. The way we eat, the way we exercise and have movement into our lives, whether or not we're sleeping, whether or not we know how to decompress and de-stress and relax.
Yeah.
What kind of environment are we living in? All of those things contribute to our ability to take back control over what's going on with us. And that includes during those perimenopausal years, making that process go a bit smoother if we start to make some tweaks and shifts with those lifestyle factors, which is really the area where I really help women kind of do and work those things out to see some improvement in their life.
That's absolute beauty in that. And so I wanna put out a question then. If we're talking about some of these what I like to call tips and tricks, and touching on the ancestral piece and what you do in functional medicine, can you tie in something or an example of what you've seen that would be helpful, especially as we're transitioning through Minority Health Month, minority awareness of maternal wellness, but for women of color, versus other ethnic backgrounds, or what that approach would look like. So could you touch on a couple of those things? I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. And some of these tips may sound generic, but there are core fundamental areas that can totally reverse things that are going on that are detrimental to your health. And some of them, particularly as you mentioned with women of color, there's a huge diabetic, there are statistics in this country that most of which are sitting with women or people of color, have a high degree of pre-diabetes or diabetes. And the reason for that is we are often not taught how to eat properly, how to eat so that we're not causing high blood sugar, high insulin. And again, going back to, what was your childhood nutrition like? We need to kind of look at the way we learn to eat through our families, which might have been okay earlier on, but as you start to hit the 40 plus club, the things you used to eat don't work anymore. Your metabolism slows down. You might develop something called insulin resistance. So one of the key things we need to do is really look at what we're eating. That's number one, and eliminate refined sugars. And if you don't understand what refined sugars. And I'm, as a health coach, I help people kind of understand, because there's sugar in everything. And just because you're not eating a piece of cake or a piece of pie doesn't mean you're not getting sugar. Sugar is in everything. Sugar's in a potato when it turns into glucose in your body, right? So number one is just to eliminate, at the very least, try to eliminate sugars that get you out of that stable state of blood sugar, and instead is causing your blood sugar to go high. That's a big problem in the people of color community, where I was looking at the statistics the other day from the CDC on diabetes and the ethnic populations where the highest percentage was. And it's kind of not surprising, but it also says we've got some work to do in that community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another area is, and again, may sound generic, but it's really important during your perimenopausal years, is to reduce your alcohol intake. And I know that could be hard to hear, because a lot of us in our 40s like to go wine tasting. We've developed, we're sophisticated now. So we've developed a taste for good wines, and we want to go wine tasting, and we're eating well. We've lived long. We want to kind of celebrate. But in that celebration, we have to do it in moderation, because alcohol and weight loss do not go together. And alcohol contributes to that weight gain that we're having. So maybe try to reduce our alcohol intake. Caffeine is another one that can, cause us to, our cortisol, which helps us maintain our stress response, can make that go into an imbalance. And just cooking more at home instead of eating out. Those are really basic nutritional things we can do, but they're really important in trying to reverse some of the things that we're going through during those perimenopausal years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say a glass of wine is kind of replace popping a Xanax at the end of the day, or some people may mix the two, which I'm not condoning. Let's just put that out there. But you're right. And it has to be done in, so-called moderation. But that's one of the first things or approach, if someone is looking to lose weight in this time period, especially perimenopause and menopause, it's, if you want to see big gains and big gains quick, and you know that you have your occasional wine, I am going to eliminate it completely, because it's going to help you detox better. It's going to make sure that you get rid of some other areas in your body that you can, have more fat go where it needs to go, detox out of your body, and really see the inches start going away and the poundage. And then it'll work toward longevity. And then that's a whole nother conversation too, as far as, hey, if you want to, a certain time of the day, and then what type of liquors probably work better, for you and your body. And I really appreciate you talking about the insulin resistance thing and epigenetics before, because that's the hallmark of where I feel that I'm unique of being one of those OBGYNs who will talk about the epigenetics and the expression of your genes, because I have always been told I have a family history of diabetes. Well, it runs in my family. And I hear that all the time. But when I learned that it was in the power of the beholder, which was me, that could be able to translate that particular gene or not, but it all had to do with what I did now to make sure that I didn't. And that was something that I carried for like I said, throughout medical school, knowing something about genes and how they work, a lot about it, but how that affects applicable when it makes sense to you, right? 40 plus. So I like how you mentioned about stress. And I want you to kind of paint that picture of the living matrix, and collectively some of the things that you've mentioned that formulate this living matrix of how you work with women, is specifically within this particular age group.
Yeah, yeah. So the living matrix, or otherwise known as the functional medicine matrix, is actually an assessment tool and an analysis tool that's used by functional medicine practitioners and functional medicine health coaches to gather, organize, tell and retell their story, and then order the priorities based on what we discover of a plan going forward, and then to track our success. It's really part of a system of addressing their current situation. And so it begins with going through a timeline of, a person's chronological retelling of her story, creating a very personalized and precise approach to the influences that have led through the course of her life to the current conditions and symptoms and dysfunctions she's dealing with now. So the timeline includes looking at those genetic predispositions. We call them in functional medicine antecedents. And then we also look at those triggering events that have occurred throughout our life that we can usually pinpoint by saying, I haven't felt good since. Since when? What happened where you felt a change in your health? And there could be several of those triggering events that happen throughout the course of your life. And we try to identify them through that timeline. And then we look at the mediators and the perpetuators, those things that contributed to your current state that you were doing. It could have been your diet. It could have been your stress and working 24/7. It could have been a lot of other things that contributed to creating that current state that you're currently in. And so the timeline gives you an opportunity to, gather yourself, sit down, and, through a questionnaire process that we go through, it's very thorough, kind of walk through your life again, right? And pinpoint your health in different stages of your life. And then once that information is gathered through that timeline, we start to place it on what we call the functional medicine matrix. And that also includes identifying all the clinical imbalances based on the things that you've shared have happened and the diagnoses that you may have gotten through the course of your life. We've pinpointed those as well. And it really starts to give us a total whole picture of areas of concern for you that may have contributed to, why they're in front of you, Dr. LaReesa, or me. And the kind of backwards re-engineering how we can approach each of those things to reverse and take you to a place where you are reaching the outcomes that you're trying to get to, but with an understanding of how you got there in the first place.
Yeah, going back to that root cause. But I wanted to point out some very key questions that, key points that you're summarizing. It's personalized, right? And what I like is there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you by Maya. All right. There's no stronger efforts in understanding that all of those links from ancestral to functional health and those things, all of those connected dots even matter now. So personalized, right? I'm here strategic. I like strategy. I think strategy is smart and I think strategy is sexy. And then number 3 of having someone help you connect those dots, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we're kind of targeting and putting some pieces together. And that's one of the things I learned, even for myself, and what I learned with working with other women, that oftentimes when you've hit that pain point too long, they realize that the time that they've wasted trying to figure out all by themselves, so many other things going on in your life right now, and really pinpointing. And so understanding sometimes the truth is inside of you, but having someone there to help unlock that personalized health story for you so you can get the better outcomes that you deserve. Don't you think? That's
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just going through that process of understanding yourself from that perspective
Mhm.
is is rewarding in many ways, even in the way of things that you might have been blaming yourself
Mhm.
about that perhaps you didn't really have control over in the beginning because you didn't really understand it that way. You just thought there was something wrong with you.
Mhm.
And now you understand there's a story as to how this condition arrived. But the good news is there are modifiable lifestyle factors that you
Mhm.
can modify to change, to start to take back control over how you want the rest of your life to go.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm such a fan of that. I'm such a fan of that. So are there any last tokens or truth bombs you want to add to us today? And if so, welcome to share. If not, tell us where we can find you, and I can tell people where they can find you too after that.
Okay. I guess what I want to leave everyone with today, particularly when our women in the 40 plus club, is and just to reiterate honestly what you've already shared is to seek out and make them a part of your care team,
Mhm.
someone who really understands this phase of life that you're going in, because this can be the make or break in terms of how you view the rest of your life.
Mhm.
Right. And so I really would encourage people to find a practitioner like Dr. LaReesa. If you're not already working with her, you should be, who focuses on this phase of life, that perimenopause, menopause, postmenopausal journey, because it's really one of the most pivotal times in a woman's life. And you need to work with someone who understands that and can help you navigate those changes that are going on. So
Mhm.
really want to encourage you to do that.
Awesome. Awesome. And this is where you can find Carla at Being Well Aware. I love that, by the way, the title of your business, Being Well Aware. And she is someone that I'm working closely with because it's good to be aligned with those who are on the same page and have the same global outlook of where women's health is going, which is the whole future female health view. And so someone that will be working on the team with me with future clients and those women who want the same outcomes. And it's a beautiful thing to see all that come together, full spectrum, and people living what they call their best life. It's like Oprah said it, now everybody says it, but you're not intentional about it. Like,
Mm.
now you got to do something. Now you got to act. Now you got to do something. That's what I always say. So you live your best life. So what are you doing to get there? Is it personalized? Is it strategic? Is it something that, you have your team of players that are pro you, right? So, and especially if we're talking about the 40 plus club. But thank you so much, Carla, for joining us today. Time's up. We've gone a little bit over. But if you have any questions, please submit in the comments and we'll address that. And thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.